Could you survive a Reaper invasion?
Lieutenant Commander Williams, we're in sight of the spaceport. ETA 3 minutes.
We made it to the Normandy, taking heavy fire.
Hey Ansven Squad, how you doing? The Reaper invasion that takes place during Mass Effect 3 is sudden and absolutely devastating. Shepard, the main protagonist of the Mass Effect story, only barely manages to save the galaxy at the end of the game. And even then, your choices throughout the trilogy will decide on what note it all ends on. But let's imagine for a moment that the Reapers existed in our universe. Let's say that all of a sudden they invaded and started to harvest Earth. Could you survive? What would you have to do to stay alive? So to be clear, we're looking at this from a perspective of today and not in the future where Mass Effect takes place. I'll do my best in breaking it down for you, so let's start with the Reapers themselves for anyone who is unfamiliar with them. The Reapers are technological nightmares and have existed for hundreds of millions of years, if not close to billions of years. Every 50,000 years, the Reapers invade our galaxy in order to harvest all spacefaring species. This basically means that they destroy every technological civilization that has managed to progress to the age of space travel. Why do they do this? Well, you can go ahead and check out my other videos on the ending of Mass Effect 3, and you'll know. Anyway, their prime motivation is to harvest or destroy all life forms that are intelligent enough to create relatively advanced technology or close to AI. Alright, so how do they do this? Well, let's look at their physical forms. The Reapers are primarily known as living capital ships or dreadnoughts. The classic dreadnought or sovereign class Reaper usually ranges in the 2-kilometer range in length, and their outer shell are somewhat similar to cuttlefish or squids. Because of this, they actually have limbs that move, and with their main legs they can grab hold of other ships or objects to hold on to if need be. They can also land on planets and walk around like living mountains. You could imagine that their tremendous weight would cause them to collapse because of the sheer force of gravity pulling them down, but they have no problem standing upright because of their massive drive cores, which can decrease or increase the mass of an object through Mass Effect fields, hence the name of the franchise. The Reapers are terrifying not only in appearance, but also because of their weapons. Their most known type of weaponry are their magneto-hydrodynamic beams that are shot out of a smaller appendage. These beams are composed of an unknown molten metal that gets shot at a fraction of the speed of light. It's powerful enough to rip capital ships in half, and even one Reaper dreadnought is powerful enough to physically take care of an entire fleet by itself. They could in part do this because of their incredible shields that block projectiles from every direction, making one Reaper dreadnought an extreme threat to any spacefaring fleet. There are other variants of the Reapers. The ones that make up the bulk of the Reaper fleet are the destroyers. These little guys are in fact not that little, as they usually range in the 160 meter plus range in height, making them as big as some of the largest buildings in the world. These guys are also equipped with magneto-hydrodynamic cannons, so they can make short work of basically any opponent. Since they are smaller in size, this also means that they're more agile, especially in space, where they can maneuver around larger enemy capital ships, climb onto them, and blast their hulls from close range, making these an almost equal threat to their bigger Reaper siblings. Alright, are we done yet? Well, not quite. Every Reaper emits a so-called indoctrination field or signal. This invisible weapon can turn any organic mind into mindless slaves to the Reapers. It's extremely insidious, as you can't see or stop it from affecting you. Soon enough, anyone would turn into a mind-controlled zombie, programmed to do the Reaper's will. Okay, that's it, right? Game plan time? Nope. The Reapers also developed a tool for their pawns to use during any invasion. These tools are many, but the most commonly used are the dragon spikes. These things are used to impale organic beings onto, and after a short while, whoever was impaled on the spike will have it turned into a zombie. It's basically a quicker indoctrination tool. An additional note is that the indoctrinated ground troops can be carried around inside a Reaper, as they have internal spaces just like any ordinary spaceship. Holy hell, you might be thinking, this is just too much. How do you fight these things? Well, you don't. You can't. Not with our technology. So what would happen? The first thing that would most likely happen could be that the Reaper fleet would invade en masse at the same time, like we see in the Mass Effect 3 launch trailer. They'd all probably descend to Earth at roughly the same time, catching every country by surprise. Since we don't have long-range scanners like in Mass Effect, our satellites wouldn't detect them until it's too late. Humanity wouldn't know what hit them. So what could you do? If you aren't caught in the initial orbital laser bombardment, you'd have to count yourself lucky. But the first thing to do would be to naturally get out of the cities. The Reapers would target the most populated areas on the planet, making places such as London, Moscow, New York, Washington, Madrid, Paris, and every other large city into Reaper hotspots. Shortly after landing, the Reapers would start deploying their ground troops, and these troops would then start deploying dragon spikes as soon as possible. That's to add to their numbers. Now, we know from fact that the cyclical harvests take several years to complete in order to root out any surviving member of a species. So even if the attack would be sudden, the world's collective military would probably put up a good fight, which could help buying time for the general populace to escape. So how would, for example, the US military fare? What we can do is to compare the strength of normal capital ships in Mass Effect to the weapon capabilities of today. According to in-game lore and the Mass Effect wiki, a 800-meter-long accelerator, which is basically the barrel of the main gun that goes along with the entire ship, is able to fire one 20-kilogram slug projectile at a velocity of 1.3% the speed of light, every 2 seconds. Each slug has the kinetic energy of 38 kilotons of TNT, which is around 2.5 times the energy released from the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. As we saw from Sovereign in Mass Effect 1, not even several capital ships could penetrate the Reaper's shields, and Sovereign was getting bombarded from all sides, meaning that the constant firing would add up to probably thousands of kilotons of TNT, reaching into the megatons, which is again around the energy released when Russia tried out the Tsar bomb, which was the most powerful nuclear weapon ever detonated. So detonating several Tsar bombs would be the only alternative here, and we can't be quite sure if it would actually work. And we have to remember a few things here. First, the US military would probably hesitate in detonating a nuclear bomb, much less several ones in one city. The collateral damage would be too large. Then we also have this thing to consider. From a quick Google search, we can speculate that the Reapers number at around 18,000 capital ships. Now, most of the Reaper fleet are not capital ships, but rather destroyers and processing Reapers and even transport Reapers. Even if the Reaper forces had to split off to deal with the other planets and civilizations, even just a few hundred capital ships would prove to be almost too much. So there would be several Reaper capital ships landing in each capital around the world, and then additional ones landing in smaller cities. And then we have the destroyers that make up the bulk, as in several thousands. These would most likely be patrolling around cities and outside of them too, making it even harder to escape. Alright, Alex. We get it. We're fucked. Now, could you survive it? Maybe? Anyway, the human military in every country would probably put up a good fight, at least against the Reaper ground troops. We know that the Reaper zombies, or husks as they're commonly known, are actually quite weak to gunfire, so in all honesty, people around America owning a gun would probably have a better chance at surviving. While the Reaper husks are preoccupied with the human military, the best idea, as I said before, would be to flee from the main cities and stay away. But first, rations. We know that these harvests can take years, so if you could find shelter somewhere, you need to be able to sustain yourself. Looting would almost have to be a necessity, unfortunately, and if you could find a vehicle that can fit a lot of baggage, like a small truck or similar, you could fill that thing up to the brim with water and food, preferably canned food. Oh, and don't forget a shovel. If you are lucky enough to escape the sudden attack, and even more lucky to have been able to bring rations, you would now have to find a hiding place to weather out the storm. The best idea would probably be to drive far out into the wilderness and corners of the world that are sparsely populated. Preferably big forests and underground bunkers. These bunkers would have to be well hidden, however, as the Reaper ground troops would scour the entire planet for any remaining human alive. If you find yourself in a deep forest or jungle, you should start digging immediately. The best way to hide would be to build some form of underground habitat. You should also just throw away your phone or any other technology with internet access and discard it far away from your location. The Reapers would most likely track you down otherwise, since they're actively searching for communications technology. If you're fast enough and work hard, you might be able to survive the initial attack, and if you stay hidden in your underground shelter, living on any rations you could bring or on any unsuspecting animals that might get into your shelter, you could survive. It wouldn't be very likely, however, as the rations you scrambled to collect would run out, and if the Reaper ground troops wouldn't find you, then starvation would. Even worse, if you brought someone with you, like a loved one, a parent, a spouse, or your entire family, you would never know if they got indoctrinated, unless you stuck together like glue all the time for several years. Even taking one step outside your shelter could result in all of you getting detected, either from the ground forces crawling all over the planet or from a Reaper lying in wait just a few clicks away. The indoctrination field could reach far enough to affect you, and then it would all be over. Alright guys, that's it. I probably missed several things, as usual, but this was fun to make. I'm curious, what would you have done? Could you even survive? Leave a comment down below. I'll read it as always. Oh, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy content like this. Have a great day and Sven Squad.